Hi, I'm George Timko, and this is my presentation on Prada and its ties to fascism. My major is biology, and I chose my presentation topic because I have a keen interest in fashion, and more specifically, Prada Molino. I actually did want to go into a fashion major, but I also really like biology. So let's get into the presentation. Miuccia Prada's background. Miuccia Prada was born in Milan, Italy, May 10, 1949. She is a doctorate in political science, and this shows in her collections with her extreme interest in politics reflecting in her work. She was an active member of the Italian Communist Party and the Union of Italian Women, essentially meaning she was a feminist. Prada's first collection insights. Most high end fashion brands like to ignore politics because of its rough nature, and fashion, as such an idolized thing, doesn't want to mix the two worlds. Miuccia, on the other hand, loved politics and believed it was very important, so Italian political affairs reflected in her work. Miuccia Prada's first show/collection was in Milan, Italy for fall 1988. Prada's first collection, fall 1988. Before the show, Prada was known as a small leather goods producer, but this show had a major emphasis on advertising that this collection would be made up of high-end knitwear and the best fabrics. The collection was comprised of 70 articles of clothing. Unlike many other brands at the time, the collection was very conservative and had many masculine looks, not showing much skin and using blazers, slacks, long coats, cardigans, etc. The collection had made odes to the walks of life of Italy at the time, to the working class, housewives, and military officers. Collection symbolism. The collection drew attention to the style of dress the women of the time had adopted. During the war, the men of the house had to leave to serve in the Italian army, so the women had to take on a more independent role, taking up many of the men's responsibility. This newfound sense of independence gave women more confidence, and that reflected in their wardrobe. The new style they adopted was the tomboy look, or the machette. On top of the references to the walks of life in Italy, this style of dress was very abundant in the show. Historical military context. Cut back to 1922, when Mussolini took power. The nation of Italy was a fascist nation, and his main idea for what he wanted from the people was for the working class to work in their unfair jobs, and that the only identity that they had was connected to the state. This was called class cooperation, and it was far from a fan favorite. Fascist symbolism and Prada's subversion. Miuccia's show incorporated both parts of high and low class society and integrated it into the collection, giving a sense of equality to the people throughout the collection. Miuccia's use of the black fez and black looks, an iconic fascist military style, mixed with the attire of everyday people, also brought the idea of quality to light. Many common military jackets at the time had a configuration that put emphasis on larger pectoral muscles to show masculinity in army men. Miuccia used this idea but flipped it on its head, making a similar garment that looked more like breast, flaunting more femininity while keeping the traditional style of military jackets and the style adapted by the women of Italy at the same time. Influence of Italian neorealist cinema. Italian neorealist films were mainly consisted of telling the stories of the working class people during post-war Italy, stories of poverty and questioning society. These films were a hallmark in Miuccia's childhood, and we see one-to-one replication of looks from certain films in her era. The looks that we see are very restrained and mainly composed of sober uniform looks. Fascism control over women's fashion. In 1985, Mussolini instituted the National Fashion Board to Italianize women's fashion. This essentially meant that he wanted women to take pride in their femininity, and any choice of clothing was prohibited. The clothing permitted were high heels, conservative clothing, blouses, black skirts, caps, etc. Mussolini said, "It's important to supply women with Italian clothing that conveyed the soft grace that she had been proud of for many years, that for about 10 years she had decided to deny." For even more background, Mussolini decided to invade Ethiopia, and this decision led to many countries in Europe stopping all trade with Italy. This is obviously bad for everyone in Italy, making living a much harder task. But Mussolini pushed the idea that Italian-made goods are the best and Italy will be completely self-reliant. Prada's rejection of fascism. Previously brought up, the machette style took great inspiration from Coco Chanel in France. Italy's pro-made in Italy mindset forbid the import of any patterns or garments to be shipped into the country. But not only Prada, but many other designers would order the designs and have them smuggled into the country. This went completely undetected because of the lack of fashion sense of the leaders. Much of Miucci's collection had many bright and vibrant colors because that was how she wanted to dress when she was younger, but couldn't because of the Italian dress code. The collection took the standard of dress for the time and transformed it into something Mussolini would have hated by giving it more tomboyish characteristics. What Prada is conveying. Miucci's work delivers a subtle but powerful critique of fascist values. She challenged class hierarchy by showing all social roles with equal importance and undermines militarism by repurposing fascist garments in a non-authoritarian way. She also rejects enforced femininity by opting for comfort and individuality instead. Through this, she uses Italian fashion itself to quietly undermine fascist ideology, expressing political control and inequality through design. All right, thank you very much for listening to my presentation and video. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you have a good one.